So you mentioned within the report there being some of those key findings, and one, you know, talked very much about social work practice and how do we get back to that and what does that look like. I'm just thinking, what are those messages and those thoughts around the practice of others, so those other professionals, the school settings, youth work, like you said before, if they were engaged, or the police and what their roles are.
Yeah, okay. I mean, what was evident from the information that we looked at was that for some of the young people, they had very good relationships with their youth justice workers, but there was an absence of relationship with other agencies. So for one young person, there was real limited involvement by the social worker, which could have been improved on. Going back to my earlier point about relationship building, it's really important as practitioners we make sure we have the time to build those relationships and to spend time with young people and to develop trust, because so much of this is about trust. Why would you expect a young person to tell you intimate details about their own lives if you haven't got that foundation of trust there? And that has implications for capacity in the organisation, for workload, for caseload. But that issue of trust, that issue of relationship building is foundational to good practice in moving forward. Of course, we need to adhere to policy, local protocols, assessment timescales. Those things are really important. But without those issues, which are very hard to put in a numerical box, our practice will be flawed and will fall down.
And I think that leads really nicely onto the question around how the young people within this review were involved in the plans, because you've talked about what those plans look like and the robustness of it, but how were they actively engaged and how was it meaningful for them?
I think one of the issues that was pertinent for the review is there was limited involvement by the young people in their plans. A couple of the young people were described as being hard to engage, which therefore kind of raises the question of professional tenacity. And this sometimes has a cultural component, because in Somalian culture, for instance, you have to offer services a number of times before they are seen as being authentic. And we have to understand that kind of cultural component, cultural dynamic. So the issue of tenacity, particularly for those young people and families who we sometimes describe as being hard to reach, is really important. We need to keep going back, asking the question, going back and asking the question. And again, as I've said earlier, that has implications for capacity, for workload, for the time that we make to work with families, but it's really critical in terms of moving practice forward.
And then the other point that you raised within the findings was around the importance of, or the absence of the fathers, but I suppose that counteracts that thought around the importance of male role models, whoever that might be, whether that be uncles, grandparents, etc. And so what was your findings within that?
Very much for all three young people there was an absence of father figures, male role models, and there was an absence in terms of the assessment, in terms of considering who was in that wider family or that wider community who we could engage with. And again, the use of family group competencies can be very helpful in this respect. But there was a real absence in terms of those male role models, bringing them into the kind of plan, bringing them into the intervention, and using some of their skills to actually help the young people with issues around their own identity. And for all of us, I mean, we all need role models in our lives, and as practitioners, we model behaviour. So particularly for some of us who are male practitioners, we need to think about who we are, what kind of behaviours we model, how we build trust. And there are some foundational issues there in terms of integrity, honesty, reliability, that young people really look to, because these are the things that will make a difference for them. And these are the things that have been so absent in their earlier years. And again, you can't put these things into a quantitative indicator box. They're about who we are and the relationships that we develop.